We want to move on to another sort of review. Joining us to discuss some of those stories and more are our guest host, Nancy Giles, that we already know very well, social commentator. Also from WCBS TV in New York, Derek Dennis, good old friend. I used to see him in the halls over there. And from the website The Root, Hillary Crosley. Hello to you.
Good morning.
Thank you all for joining us. Man, this has been a full week of news.
Oh my goodness.
Definitely.
Yeah, I want to start with you, Derek, because of course we're talking about gun control. It's gun control, gun control, gun control. And you covered the Newtown shooting.
Yes, I was there for the entire week. And, you know, when you talk about gun control, as a reporter, you really think about being there and seeing the images and the people. And so it's hard to find anyone to really want to take a step back from, you know, those scenes and those images. But when we talk about gun control, a lot of gun rights advocates say, well, you know, I want to protect my right to bear arms. I want to not have so much limitations on what we're doing. But then the other side of it is, you know, we need to protect our children. We need to protect ourselves. We need to be able to try to limit some of the guns that are out there that are being, you know, trucked into our communities.
Was it difficult? I imagine it had to be, to separate your own personal feelings and the emotional impact.
It's really tough. It really is, because you think about being there and you see, you know, parents crying, you see little children being scared, but then at the same time, you wonder, you know, how these guns are getting into the communities. You wonder why people are so divided on this issue. Why can't we just all come to an agreement and say, hey, we need to do something about limiting the guns in our communities?
I mean, because we were in an argument earlier with the gun guy that was an advocate. I mean, there is a basic, he wanted to say it's not a constitutional right to be alive, but I mean, you should be able as a 6-year-old to go to first grade and feel like nobody's going to blow your brains out.
Right.
You should be able to go to a movie theater and be able to relax and not think somebody's going to come in. This is the disconnect that I just don't get. Considering the fact that even with the gun safety laws, that the proposals, there's still over 2,000 kinds of weapons that you can get. How many weapons do we need? What's up?
And of course, this week it was really centered on how the White House and how President Obama was using the families, the parents of the victims of Newtown to really push the effort to get meaningful gun legislation just heard, for starters, much less have measures, some sort of meaningful measure passed.
I believe they were actually out all night reading the names of the victims of the Newtown massacre.
And the victims since then till now, which is over 3,000, I think.
I think they started at like 3 p.m. and read all the way until 12 o'clock at night. And then a religious group took over, and they erected crosses and other religious symbols all across the national lawn, and then they began reading names as well.
But the compromise, I think, in the gun control legislation is trying to limit these high-powered, high-magazine rifles, you know, but the NRA will say, you know, the only thing stopping a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, and so you wonder where the issue is.
I just need to get this off my chest because it's been bothering me. My biggest problem with the NRA is that they should really call themselves the NRSA, the National Rifle Sellers Association, because it's all about commerce.
It is.
That's the only logical reason you could have them saying, oh, they'll get, you know, more guns, because they want more sales. Higher magazines means it's more expensive. It's about money. It's that, you know, I could go on and on.
Well, we have a favorite guest host around here that says when it's not about the money, it's about the money. It's always about the money. Let's go on to another topic. Of course, we reported right here the report from the DIA that says that North Korea possibly could launch a nuclear weapon on a missile, and there's some disagreement amongst the intelligence agencies about whether or not that's true and how close they are to that. But Nancy, I wonder, as you watch the news, because you're always watching it to make comment on it, does this scare you?
I do get scared, but I think the part of me that watches the news and sort of censors the stuff that I don't want to deal with looks at Kim Jong-un and just thinks he reminds me in ways of George W. Bush, like a son trying to like be, you know, big, you know, like outdo his dad. It's almost like he's all huff and puff, but I hope not as much reality behind the bluster. He just, I don't know, I feel like he's posturing more than. But maybe it's because it's my way of coping. I don't know. That's my take.
Well, you know, the soundbite of the week for me was Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel when he said, you know, we don't think that he's serious. We don't think he will do anything, but this is not something that you want to be wrong about.
Wow. Right.
And that's the part that sort of, you know, makes my cheeks clench and not the ones up here.
Especially in New York. I feel like we're always the target of the axis of evil, and everyone is like, oh, it's Brooklyn, you'll be fine. It's like, really though?
But
They
when I-
care about Bed-Stuy.
When I heard the statements, it kind of disturbed me because I don't know if they're couching their comments, but it made me disturbed to think that they didn't quite have a handle on what they actually know or what is actually going on there, how much is
Or
being
what
built,
they're saying.
or what they're saying. Right. I don't know if they're
Yeah.
couching it, but it's they kind of gave the impression we don't know, but we got to be careful. Well, you should know. We want you to know. We need
You know what
to
they
know.
should do? They
Yeah.
should send Dennis Rodman. He'd tell us.
Oh my God.
That's right, since he's BFF.
Oh my
But-
God.
They are
That's
besties.
embarrassing.
Yeah.
That was like crazy. Or maybe send Jay-Z and Beyonce, since they're getting access all over the world, right?
Right, right. And speaking of Jay-Z,
Great segue, Nancy.
perfect segue. I'm going to have to give you a $5 bill for that. I appreciate
On
that.
that note.
Yeah, yeah.
So what are your thoughts, Hillary, about this whole kerfluffle
Yeah.
that has
Ooh, good
lasted
word.
a whole week? Can you believe the legs on this story?
I wish I could say, oh, I'm so shocked and surprised. Beyonce releases a commercial at like 9 o'clock in the
Well,
morning.
you're
and
right
people
about
wake
that.
up early, like, ooh, girl, you're working out and then drinking Pepsi? We totally believe that. I think it was really interesting the way that at an actual White House press event,
Yes.
someone was reading the lyrics
Yes.
of a
Yes.
song
Holy
that
mackerel.
came out on Hot 97. The radio station here in New York,
That's
like
not
10
every day.
hours
Yeah.
earlier, forcing White House press secretary to actually respond
Yeah.
and say something funny. I think
Right.
he said something like "nothing rhymes with the Treasury Department," but it was just one of those moments where, wow, we have like North Korea to
Right.
think about. We have gun
Iran,
control to
Yeah.
Syria,
Yeah,
the
we have
list goes
serious
on.
stuff.
But one,
that
of the
you're
things
worried
that
about.
but one of the things that it did do was that it also facilitated this conversation about why exactly do we still have
Yes.
this agreement or lack this
The blockade
this
or- yeah.
blockade with Cuba.
Right.
Who knew that it would take a rapper and an R&B Grammy Award-winning singer to bring that conversation forward?
Right.
But that was also one of the end results.
Well, I
too.
think in this country we see it as, well, what's the big deal? But in Cuba, Beyonce and Jay-Z will be used as propaganda to really promote that country's problems and its ironclad grip on the people who live there. And so, we don't want to use Jay-Z and Beyonce, in that way.
Right.
But here in this country and in New York, as a reporter, we've covered it, and we wonder what the big deal is. But it really shows the very close relationship that the two have to the president, how they're able to get that kind of access that everybody else
Well,
can't.
according to the Department of Treasury, they receive no special
Right.
treatment. They got over there the same way everybody else that goes over there.
Yeah.
So
Look at Derek. Derek, Derek, you do not
They go in
convince.
secret, super secret.
Yeah.
Speaking of propaganda, I want to move
Right.
on so we can get to our last topic,
Sure.
and particularly with you, Derek, because you are a Howard University alum.
Yes, I am.
And a very unlikely speaker
Sure.
spoke there this week, Rand Paul. We had one of the students of Howard University on yesterday to talk about his perspectives and how the students received it. But what were your thoughts?
Well, first of all, you got to give it to Rand Paul for literally going into the lion's
It's
den.
brave.
I agree.
It's brave.
I mean, you really
agree.
do.
You
You know
agree
The
with
only
that.
reason I don't agree is because he went into the lion's den and then told a bold-faced lie.
Well, yes.
I mean, if you're going to be proud of being a progressive and not supporting the Civil Rights Act,
Right.
and you're going to go to Howard,
Yes.
stand there and say, I don't support the Civil Rights Act.
You know
But-
what it sounded
Well, what
like?
he
It
said
sounded
is
like
he
when
didn't
Mitt Romney
support
went and spoke to the
component of it.
NAACP. Do you
Yeah.
guys remember that?
Say
They were
that
like,
again,
"Boo."
say it again.
I said it reminded me of when Mitt Romney went and spoke to the NAACP, and everybody was like, "Oh, we
Oh,
can't even. We're
please,
so
yes.
offended." It was.
But I'm so proud of my, students there at Howard because they did not let Rand Paul get away with it. And you would think that he would know better than to go there and try to spout history to the students
Could
of a
you
historically
believe
black
that?
college. I mean, it
Like, we don't know
boggles
that
the mind.
Republicans...
And they're
that-
fresh out of class.
And doesn't it speak to the disconnect
Yes.
there between the Republican Party and the African American community,
Yeah.
particularly?
Yeah, but Rand Paul said, I got an uphill battle here. I know it. I know that I'm speaking to a group that's not going to be sensitive or at least open to what I'm saying, but I'm trying here. You know?
Derek, I had a question because I think I read this on Twitter,
Yeah.
which means it has to be true.
Absolutely.
that the Howard students were told beforehand that there were certain questions they weren't allowed to ask. Now, that changed, or what's your inside information on that?
No one can tell a Howard
I
student
was
what
going
they
to
can
say,
ask or
but like
say.
that
No
there was
way.
some faculty restrictions or something, but none?
No.
Okay, all right, cool.
Not when I was a student there was no way it was going to happen, and I'm sure it has not changed, and it showed that it didn't change because the students
Right.
got up, some were heckling them, some had to be removed because they got a little out of hand, but the point was made that Rand Paul cannot come to Howard University, spew, wrong information, try to
lies,
Forget
L-I-E-S,
the
lies.
first African American
Right.
senator.
Was there another point made in that
Yeah.
Republican outreach to the minority communities is working, is failing, is worth it?
Well, I think the point is made that they are trying, and that they're trotting out Ron Paul and others to try to at least see if they can make some inroads in the minority community and the African American community to win some votes over. Having the conversation is the point. They're making the conversation, making the or at least trying to get that voter pool to come to their side.
Well, I got to say, you guys are fun.
Yes.
Would you come back again? This
Absolutely.
is great. Derek, Hillary, thank you so much
Yes.
for coming and remembering the week with us. And we also want to take a moment to thank our special guest host,
it's been a
Nancy
pleasure.
Giles. It's been all
There's
our
too much
pleasure.
to say.
There is too much to say, and our segments are longer than the average morning show.
I know. I think we could have done an hour just on Jay-Z and Beyonce.
I would like absolutely.
Can we have 2 hours?
Always good.
And maybe 2 hours on guns.
Hey, oh my gosh.
Thank you so much.
Thank
we do
you.
appreciate it.
Thank
We hope to
you.
see you again.